Joe Biden has had a horror run to close out 2023. Gaffes, lies, and bad policy decisions have turned voters in the US against the president and significantly damaged his chances of re-election in 2024. Sky News All Stars James Morrow, Rita, Panahi, and Megyn Kelly exposed the Joe Biden lies that have contributed to the president's demise. Joe Biden is no stranger to a word salad, and this week he served up one of his worst when announcing funding for a high-speed train line in Nevada, says Sky News All-Star Rita Panahi.
But first, let's check in with the leader of the free world, President Joe Biden, who has had a rough week with his crack addict, whore enthusiast son Hunter facing multiple indictments, but not for all the offences he should be charged with. The Biden administration's ongoing border crisis has intensified, with new monthly records being set, millions crossing into the US illegally every single year. This week, another record smash with over 12,000 migrant encounters at the southern border on Tuesday. Yes, that's 12,000 in a single day. And that's just the ones that were encountered crossing illegally. But the president wasn't talking about the illegal immigration crisis yesterday or his degenerate son. He was in Nevada pledging billions for a high-speed train line, or as the president put it, how much?
Over $1,300,000,300 million.
What was that, Joe? What was that?
Over $1,300,000,300 million.
What's most worrying is that he was reading that from an auto cue, and we still got over $1,300,000,300 Yeah.
And as if that wasn't bad enough, at the same announcement, Joe Biden wheeled out his well-trodden story about an Amtrak conductor he knew, which has since been debunked many times.
But pledging $3 billion for trains presented Biden with a perfect opportunity to again repeat one of his favourite verifiable lies. This one about an Amtrak conductor he knows congratulating him for travelling more than 1 million miles.
How many miles you use an aircraft for the United States Air Force as vice president? I just read in the paper, Joe, you traveled 1,200,000 miles in Air Force. He said, big, I won't quote him exactly. He said, big deal, Joey. He said, we just had a retirement dinner in Newark, New Jersey. He said, just had a retirement dinner. You know how many miles you've ridden? I said, no, Angie. He said, 1,327 miles. I don't hear any more about the Air Force.
Why does he keep doing this? It's one thing to lie about making money from your son's dodgy business dealings that essentially amounted to a pay-for-access scheme. But why does the president lie about things that have been debunked, even by the friendliest pro-Democrat media, and about issues of little consequence? Is he such a pathological liar that he can't help himself? If Joe's lips are moving, it's almost guaranteed that lies are spilling out, because even CNN, the Democrats' unofficial propaganda arm, has called out the president over this oft-repeated lie. This fact check is from mid-2021. For the record, the dude he refers to retired from Amtrak in 1993. None of that story ever happened. But it wasn't just tall tales about Amtrak conductors in his latest speech.
Joe Biden was also caught out lying about the shape of the economy and the positive impact of Bidenomics.
Like Australia, the biggest issue facing everyday Americans is the cost of living. And oh boy, the president had some good news to deliver on that front.
All told, we've created 14 million jobs since he took office, more than any president has created in all 4 years of his term. Wages are up more than inflation.
Oh, he stuck to the auto cue there wisely, but the auto cue was also full of lies. Sure, there's been millions of jobs added, but most of those jobs aren't new. They're simply workers returning to the jobs they were forced to leave due to the pandemic response. Taking credit for that is a bit rich. And as for his claim there that wage growth is higher than inflation, pure malarkey. The Consumer Price Index shows that prices have soared by more than 17% since President Joe Biden took office. Or as Joe would put it,
over $1.3 billion.
The president's brainchild, Bidenomics, has not been the raving success he likes to proclaim, says Sky News All-Star Megyn Kelly.
What is extraordinary, again, inside the polls, and there's polls within the polls and data within the polls, and it's been fascinating to watch Democrats try to find the way to say, oh, all of this doesn't really count. And particularly on MSNBC, they have gone nuts about this, the result when it comes to the economy. That, well, the economy's doing okay and President Biden's doing great and Bidenomics works. The reality is that, as you know, this poll says that a huge number of Americans say that Biden's policies have directly hurt them. So you've got this idea of sort of the people who've got a shed load of money talking on television, who sit back and talk about everything at the macro level, but the micro level where normal people live, they say, you know what, I hated the tweets, I couldn't stand a lot of the crazy, but I had a better life under the orange man.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. Biden is out there calling it Bidenomics. It's just like the American dream. And everyone is sitting at home not being able to afford a gallon of milk saying, it doesn't feel like the American dream. Why do I feel so bad if things are going so well? The inflation that we've been suffering over here since he took office and spent trillions recklessly, despite the warnings that doing so at a time when he just took office, when we didn't need that for COVID relief, and we're already some $6 trillion into the hole on all the spending, made no sense whatsoever. He did it, and the effects of it were felt almost immediately. At the same time, he was rolling back all of our independence when it came to energy, making us more reliable on foreign government sources, putting us in the Chinese hands when it comes to wind, when it comes to solar, not allowing us to drill to take care of ourselves. Gas prices went through the roof. People are still reeling from that. You make $50,000 a year or $65,000 a year, you count every penny. It doesn't, just because gas prices have gone down since a year and a half ago, doesn't mean you've instantly recovered, especially with this inflation that's been baked in for so many years. Yes, it's come down, but it's still much higher than it was when Trump was president, and people feel it. So it's some 17% of the electorate says they feel the change negatively under Joe Biden economically, and some 18% said they felt it positively under President Trump. So it's an exact, opposite swing of voters who say, this guy stinks, this guy made my life better. And that's why Trump is beating Biden when it comes to the economy by a margin of 59 to 37. Voters trust Trump over Biden on the economy, and it's not going to change.
Joe Biden has always maintained he was never involved in his son Hunter's business dealings. But this has also been debunked time and time again. However, the president still refuses to admit what's really going on, says Sky News All-Star James Morrow.
Let's not take our eye off the ball. Long before the war broke out between Israel and Gaza, long before the GOP started holding its debates, long before even the whole slew of trials designed to ensnare Donald Trump and stop him from returning to the White House, there was this one increasingly incontrovertible fact. Namely, that Joe Biden and his wastrel son Hunter's business dealings were far more connected than either one of them cares to admit. And in the coming year, the Biden family business schemes are going to present a massive problem for the Democrats that is going to weigh heavily on the minds of those who decide whether or not Joe Biden actually is allowed to run again. Consider this from a press conference just 2 days ago, when the president was asked about his business dealings with his son Hunter's business associates.
Can you explain to the Americans, amid this impeachment inquiry, why you interacted with so many of your son and brother's foreign business associates?
I'm not going to comment on that. I did not, and it's just a bunch of lies.
You didn't interact with many of their business associates?
I did not. They're lies.
Lies, just a bunch of lies. Not even a malarkey.
James Morrow goes on to list all of the documented meetings between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's business associates to prove corruption.
Associates, it doesn't look like these were lies at all. It looks, in fact, like a pattern of corruption between Hunter and Joe to sell influence and access to the U.S. government. Here's a small and entirely incomplete list just to get you started. In November 2010, Joe Biden had a sit-down meeting with Eric Schwerin, the president of Hunter's private equity firm, in the West Wing, and used a secret email to exchange hundreds of emails between them when he was vice president. In December 2013, Hunter flew with Joe Biden aboard Air Force Two to China, where he introduced him to Jonathan Lee, a Chinese businessman. Next year, April 2014, Joe Biden met with Devon Archer, another co-founder of Hunter's private equity firm, in the White House a week before Archer joined the board of Burisma. Remember our Ukrainian oil and gas friends? August 2014, pictures show Joe Biden golfing with his son Hunter and Devon Archer, while they were both, that's Hunter and Devon, serving on the Burisma board. I wonder what they discussed at the 19th hole. April 2015, Joe Biden attended a dinner in Washington, D.C. with Hunter's business partners from Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. Would have been an interesting chat. November 2015, Joe Biden hosted his son's Mexican business partners, Carlos Slim, Miguel Alamin Velasco, and Miguel Alamin Magnani, at his personal residence. May 2017, Joe Biden meets with family business partner Tony Bobulinski twice. And that's the same, by the way, Tony Bobulinski, who testified under oath that the big guy, the guy who was getting 10% of everything, was none other than Joe Biden.
Former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney echoed this sentiment, saying Hunter's legal woes are damaging to Joe Biden.
It actually does affect him, and here's why. Hunter Biden got indicted again in California on new tax evasion charges, and they're really sordid. It details payments to adult online services, to women, and so forth. It's really sordid stuff, as you would imagine, with somebody who was having addiction issues at the time. But here's how it impacts Joe Biden. Joe Biden ran as sanity. He ran as calm after the Trump storm. Vote for me and things will get back to reasonably normal. Having your son being charged with tax evasion for giving money to hookers isn't exactly the type of thing that lends to that sanity and peace and quiet type of argument, and it's not helping Joe Biden at all.
And all of these lies and scandals are reflecting poorly in the early polling leading up to the 2024 election for Joe Biden, says polling expert John Zogby.
I haven't seen one published poll in the States, or for that matter in nationwide, including my own unpublished polls in some of the battleground states where Joe Biden is where he needs to be. He's behind in every one of the battleground states, with the exception of one where he's up by just 2 points. These are all states, as you know, just pointed out that he won, 3 years ago. And so the election is not today, but Joe Biden is not in good shape, heading into 2024. And it's compounded then by the problem that even where there appears to be objective good news, the GDP is growing at a 5.2% rate. That's really good. Inflation rate of increase is down. Stock market is exploding right now. And yet the message that he's trying to get through is not getting through, compounded by his poll numbers.
Joe Biden's polling is so shocking that even the widely despised Donald Trump is outpacing his rival, says political journalist John Fund.
Well, let's face it, every Democrat in Washington with any kind of political sense knows that Joe Biden is the one Democrat Donald Trump could certainly beat. And all of the polls indicate that. Joe Biden is in a very curious position with that comment, because he says that, of course, he's accomplished so much. Bidenomics, which, of course, has bombed in the polls. foreign policy successes. I don't know what they are, but he claims that they exist. So you'd think that a president would be running on his record. Instead, Biden, remember in 2020, James, he told us, I'm going to be a transition figure. I'm old enough that I recognize I may well serve only one term, and I'm a transition to the next generation. Well, apparently he loves the White House so much, or perhaps Dr. Jill, the First Lady, loves the White House so much, he's decided to run again. But instead of running on his record, he's running because Donald Trump is my opponent, and I have to save democracy from Donald Trump. The real sadness of our election, if it's going to be a race of Trump versus Biden 2.0, is that it sounds like it's a political grudge match. Donald Trump is running for revenge, and Joe Biden is running because he somehow has convinced himself he's the only man who can save America from Donald Trump.